Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Board Game Captain, and today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 dueling card games. So, what do I consider a dueling card game? So, for me, a dueling card game is a game that's either 2 players only or best at 2 players. So, it can have more players, but if it really feels to me like it was meant to be played at 2 players, it qualifies. And it has to have most of the actions take place with the cards. Now, you can have a board in a dueling card game, in my opinion, if the board is more minor. And I will reference which ones of these have a board for their in their dueling card game. But as long as I feel like all the major actions are taken with cards, it feels like a dueling card game to me. So, without any further ado, let's get into my list for my top 10 dueling card games. Number 10. Okay, so my number 10 favorite dueling card game is a game that I've been a big fan of for quite some time since it came out, and that is Grimm Swingers. So Grimm Swingers is this really cool fantasy mixed with Wild West sort of card game. It's actually got 2 different ways to play it. One is a dueling card game and the other as a kind of cooperative adventure game, but I like it best at the dueling card game. Now, you can play it at more players, but it really feels like the 2 players is where it's meant to be played at. And it plays in a way where the cards kind of have like a rock, paper, scissors sort of mechanic where you put them down and then you flip them up and reveal them. And if you card count and pay attention to what cards your opponent has already used, because you don't get to pull them back up into your hand until you've used most of the cards from your hand, you can pay attention to what they will not have a counter for, and what they will not have that will trump your certain cards, especially once you're a few rounds in. So it becomes really cool in that manner. Also, there is this occasional interesting tiebreaker that can happen, whereby you get to play like a variation of almost of blackjack as like a mini game in the middle of the game. And while the artwork is fantastic, the feel is fantastic. And while simple, the mechanics are quite enjoyable, and that's why this made my list for my top 10 favorite dueling card games, Grimm Swingers. Number 9. Okay, so my number 9 favorite dueling card game is a trick-taking game, but unlike most other trick-taking games, this one is meant to be played with 2 players and 2 players only. There are no other player counts in here, and this is Fox in the Forest. So I've been a big fan of trick-taking games for ages and ages and ages. When I was in college, me and Lynn and friends of ours used to spend a lot of nights hanging out at all-night diners on Long Island, playing spades until like 3 or 4 in the morning, while drinking endless cups of coffee, and it was tons of fun. I absolutely loved spades. It's one of my favorite classic card games. But, you know, it's hard to find a game that plays well as a trick-taking game at 2 players, but Fox in the Forest does it amazingly well. It captures that same sort of joy for me that you get from a game like spades in a 2-player format, and then some. So 2 of the best things in Fox in the Forest, in my opinion, are, one, the fact that there's an interesting element where you want to have the most tricks. You want to take the most, you want to win the most tricks, but you don't want to win them all, because if you start taking a wild runaway lead, your opponent can try to throw the game to let you take all the tricks. And if you do take all of the tricks, what's going to happen is actually they get the points. It's kind of like shooting the moon in hearts. And the other thing that's really cool about this game that I like a lot is the fact that all of the odd-numbered cards have special abilities, and the special abilities vary quite a bit. Some of them allow you to change the trump suit, or to change cards out from your hand, or things like that. And they're all real interesting, and they make it very different. The Fox, by the way, is the one that lets you actually swap the trumps. You do it by taking a card from your hand and swapping it for the card that represents what suit is the trump suit. You can decide on what the trump suit is. And that is a really, really cool card to play. So I'm a big fan of Fox in the Forest. It's why it is my number 9 favorite dueling card game. Number 8. Okay, so my number 8 favorite dueling card game is another one that plays technically at more player counts than just 2, but I like it best at 2. That's where I really feel it excels, and that is God's Forge. So God's Forge is this really awesome game that does also have dice in it, but it really does feel, and it also has a board, but the board is really mostly a placeholder and a scoring track. And the dice are the one thing that almost made me not want to put this on the list, because a good portion of the mechanics of this has to do with rolling the dice to try to be able to use your cards, and so that it does have a major element in the game, but it does feel like the cards are the big element for this. This game very much feels like a classic dueling card game, though rather than doing damage, you are gaining points. But I love the dice element added in. It makes it very unique and very different. The custom dice are really cool. The artwork on the cards is fantastic. This is a really, really fun game. I've actually done a full review and tutorial on it if you want to check it out. But I really enjoy God's Forge. It's a beautiful, awesome, and wonderful design. And that's why God's Forge made it to my number 8 favorite dueling card game. And there you have it. Number 7. My number 7 favorite dueling card game is a card game that definitely took some inspiration from the classic game of Stratego, and that is Thunder and Lightning. Now, in Thunder and Lightning, you're playing out a battle between Thor and Loki for control of Asgard, and it's weird because you get a hand of cards, but you play them down, face down in these lanes, and you get to attack straight across from your lane to your opponent's lane if you want. And when you do, you have to reveal what your card is, but your opponent also has to reveal theirs. And if you beat their number, you'll destroy their card, but if they beat yours, they destroy your card, then everything else in that lane moves up. And it's really odd and interesting. And what you're trying to do is find one particular card from your deck, from your opponent's deck, and your opponent's trying to find one particular card from your deck, and if you're able to attack it while it's on the field, and there are some ways to actually attack random cards from your opponent's hand, and they have to discard it, they lose. So it feels like the flag in Stratego, and there are other cards that very much feel like, say, the bombs and things like that. And so it does very much feel like the designer took inspiration from the classic game of Stratego, but turned it into this interesting card game format that makes it very different and unique. I really like it a lot. Thunder and Lightning is a fantastic dueling card game, and that's why it made it all the way down to my number 7 favorite dueling card game on my list. Number 6. My number 6 favorite dueling card game on my list is a game that very much feels like it takes a lot of inspiration from classic collectible card games like Magic the Gathering, for instance, but it adds in this whole new element that really sets it apart. Now, this is not a collectible card game. I should probably say the title of it. This is Hero Tales of the Tomes. Now, this is not a collectible card game. This is a fully self-contained card game, and they are doing some expansions now, some self-contained expansions. But the thing is, the mechanics of it remind me a lot of classic games like Magic the Gathering. The thing that sets it apart so much, though, is that before you start the game, you choose a hero. And the heroes are thoroughly asymmetrical. And during the game, your hero will level up. And as they level up, you gain new abilities, and you get to choose from different abilities and customize your hero. So playing the same hero twice, they could be totally different because you could have chosen totally different abilities. And sometimes you choose different abilities than you were initially thinking you were going to, because some effects that happen during the game make certain abilities not as good as others. And you're like, oh, well, I better take this ability because that's going to help me during the game. And the heroes level up fairly regularly as they go. And different heroes have different amounts of armor and different amounts of life, which you know, in many ways, thoroughly changes how the game plays depending on what character you choose, which makes it super cool. I love that about it, and it's why it has made it to my number 6 on my list of favorite dueling card games. That is Hero Tales of the Tomes. Number 5. My number 5 favorite dueling card game is a game that was a complete surprise to me, and to a lot of people as well. So the game is Phase. Now, the reason it was a surprise and the reason why it was a surprise to so many people is Phase has a really strange history. You see, it was a game that was originally meant to be a collectible card game back when AEG was doing tons of collectible card games. And they shelved it because of the downturn in the collectible card game market. And then later, they were doing this program where on Black Fridays they would release these limited edition Black Friday boxes. They usually contained a bunch of smaller little games that you could play, and that was it. But then this one, I think it was the last time they did it, they decided instead to, surprise, release a totally new game that had never been released for Phase, this game that they had shelved, which was originally supposed to be a collectible card game. They basically released it with a handful of pre-constructed decks in there and basically copies of what would have been all of the cards for it as a total surprise for that Black Friday. And I don't know what I was expecting of the game, but it wound up being awesome. The game is super cool. The thing that makes it so awesome, the thing that makes Phase so unique, other than its bizarre history, is the mechanics of the flipping of the cards. So Phase has two-sided cards, and you flip them when you use them. So cards you play, you put cards down into this area where you can use them as resources, and then to bring a card from that area out into play, you have to flip a number of cards based on their cost. So if you have 5 cards here, and one of them says 4 for its cost, you can flip the other 4 to the other sides, and then bring it out. But now, having flipped them, there was a card that said it needed 5, but now you flipped it, and now it only needs 3, because its other side only needs 3, so you can flip the other 3 and bring that one out. And then also when you attack, once they're out, when you attack with them, then they also have to flip all over to the other side as well. So there's a lot of trying to remember what was on the other side of that, what did it do, and actually the cards in your hand can also be played like spell effects, where they have yet another alternate method of using them that's kind of sideways on the cards. So it's got, like, every card has like 4 possible ways to use it. Talk about multi-purpose cards. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And because each type of card has many things that could be on the back of it as a different type of card, it's also almost impossible for your opponent to figure out what you have just by looking at the backs of your cards of what's in your hand, because when you draw them, you have to keep the back that was visible on the top of the deck facing your opponent, so they don't know what's on the other side. They only know what's on this side, so they only know 50% of the card. There's a lot of very interesting things in this game. The flipping the cards is so bizarre, but so cool. I really like Phase. I think it is a highly underrated game, and that's why Phase is my number 5 favorite dueling card game. Number 4. My number 4 dueling card game is a game that doesn't use a board, but it uses a bunch of tiles. But it does feel to me like all of the main mechanics and actions of the game are with the cards. And this is Professor Treasure's Secret Sky Castle. I love this game. This game is a lot of fun. I love the title of this game. I love the mechanics of this game. So you lay out this grid of tiles, which are the treasures and things in the Sky Castle, and then you and your opponent take turns laying down cards from your hand. You have the exact same cards, but randomly some cards are removed each round, so you don't know what cards your opponent is not playing with this round. And you take turns laying them out either above or to the side of the grid. And then once they're all laid out, they activate in initiative order and do their effects. And their effects are usually to try to help you get the tiles, because you're trying to earn keys to open treasure chests, then the treasure chests to open and use your keys to open them, or artifacts, or whatever it might be. Or in some cases, some of the abilities of the cards might be to stop your opponent from taking it or steal it from them before they can take those tiles. And you're trying to get the tiles that are worth the most points, so at the end of the game you have the highest score and you win the game of Professor Treasure's Secret Sky Castle. This is one of the most unique games on this list, because even though I do feel it's a dueling card game, it plays super differently than any other of the games on my list, which is really cool. And that is why Professor Treasure's Secret Sky Castle is my number 4 favorite dueling card game. number 3. My number 3 favorite dueling card game is a game I reviewed not too long ago. It is a game that I was sent a review copy of because I had tried the game out at last year's PAX Unplugged and talked to the designer and told him I'd love to review it if he wanted to send me a copy. He sent me a copy. I already knew I liked it. I played it with Alex. He liked it even more than I did. This is a phenomenal game, and this is Radiant Offline Battle Arena. So Radiant is obviously meant to, in a card game format, mimic the style of the online battle arenas, hence the tongue-in-cheek title. But basically the way it works is you have these 3 locations that you have to defend while your opponent has 3 locations in the same lanes that you are trying to attack. And you start out with 3 heroes that you can have out, and your cards are like attacks that support the heroes. And what you'll do is you'll choose a hero and you'll take actions to do things like attacking a hero on the other side or attacking a location. And if you attack the location, your opponent might commit one of their heroes to block your hero from attacking their location. And then you play cards to boost attack abilities or boost defense abilities and try to protect the heroes. And you slowly earn points that you can eventually level up your hero. Each of the heroes has a second leveled up side. And if you lose all 3 of your locations, it forces you to sacrifice one of your heroes and play your only deity card that is unique for that for your side for that game. And when you put out the deity card, they are the most powerful hero you can have. But if they die, you lose. So it's very interesting because you are rushing to knock out your opponent's locations to force them to play their deity. But once they play the deity, even though he's super powerful and can help really even the playing field, he's also vulnerable because if he dies, that's the end of the game for your opponent. There's also interesting things where you can sacrifice your own location cards for certain effects, which can help benefit you, even though they bring you closer to forcing out your own deity. And there's some deities that actually like to come out earlier. And you then there's one in particular that comes out right away, and then he uses if he dies, he gets to sacrifice one of the locations to just sort of come back and not be dead, which is also another interesting thing. But yeah, this game has a lot of variety. There's tons of different heroes to choose from, tons of different deities to choose from. Each one, when you choose your heroes, they decide what your deck is. So each one has 10 cards associated with it. You take those 10 cards for each of your 3 heroes, shuffle them together, and then that's your deck. And you also secretly choose which is going to be your deity, and you put them off to the side. And the deity chooses your 3 locations, which each have different effects when they're destroyed. So it makes for a crazy amount of variety in this game. This game is tons of fun. We actually did a full review and tutorial on it on the channel if you want to check it out. But spoiler alert, we rated it very highly. We like this one a lot. And that is why Radiant Offline Battle Arena is my number 3 favorite dueling card game. Number 2. My number 2 favorite dueling card game is one that does have a board, but the board is mostly a placeholder. It holds the locations for where you place cards and also holds the score. So it's not really that integral, but it's nice to have it. But this is Fight for Olympus. So I'm a huge fan of Fight for Olympus. Fight for Olympus is a self-contained card game where you share a deck of cards and you play cards out into different areas, because if you have control unopposed in a certain area, you get effects. One area where there is one spot allows you to draw an extra card. Another area allows you to take these little tokens that you can use to help pay for cards. And a third area where there are 3 spots in that area, 3 places you can play cards, allow you to swing the pendulum, which if the pendulum is on your side, you have points. If the pendulum is on your opponent's side, they have points. Swing the pendulum towards your side for every unopposed guy there. If they are opposed, the heroes fight. And you're playing with classic heroes from Greek mythology, and they're really cool. It's just a really fun game. I thoroughly enjoy this one. I love the mechanics of it. So for playing the cards, usually what you have to do is you have to discard other cards that you then can't use because you're discarding them to pay for the cards. Though, like I say, sometimes you can have earn those tokens. The different color tokens can be used to discard back to the board instead of discarding a card, so you can save some of the cards in your hand. But of course, also controlling the location that lets you draw extra cards also lets you get more resources because you're drawing extra cards. This is a really cool game. You basically play it out until either you get to max score on your side or until the deck runs out, in which case whoever side the pendulum of points is on will be the winner. Really fun game, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I've heard some people not being as big a fan of this one as I am. This is another one where I think it's a bit underrated. I like it a lot, and that's why my number 2 favorite dueling card game of all time is Fight for Olympus. And now it is time for number 1. So, my number 1 favorite dueling card game of all time is a very small publisher game. It was self-published by the designer, but it is one that I absolutely love, and I think has flown out under the radar for a lot of people. I've done a good job of talking about it a lot on my channel because it has made it into a number of my top 10 lists because I love it so much, as well as the fact that I did a full review and tutorial for it because I really feel like this game deserves a lot more attention. And that is 1750 Britain versus France. Now, this is another one where there is actually a board, but the board is a very minor side thing. The board is just for showing your control over the different other world leaders, getting them to your side of the war. But this is a game where you are playing out the colonial wars in the year 1750. One player controls Britain, the other controls France, and you're fighting over colonies in North America, the Caribbean, India, and Africa. The colonies are played out as cards on the table. You start with 3 in each of the regions, and as well as a high seas card in the middle, so you can move your forces from one region to another. You can wind up getting extra cards added to those regions later, and each of the regions will give you a special ability. Oftentimes, if you have forces there and you're in control of it. In addition, they also give you a kind of like a trade contract for a specific type of good that is common in that region, be it, precious metals or furs or fish or lumber, whatever it might be. And you collect those trade contracts off to the side, and for each set of 3 of them, you earn extra money at the beginning, extra money during your turn that you then are able to spend on cards that you play from your hand, which are your various, usually your various military forces that you play out into the different regions to go around and help you try to conquer the board. And you play for a set number of turns, and whoever has control over the most colonies will win 1750 Britain versus France. This is an amazing 2-player game. I absolutely adore this game. And again, we did do a full review and tutorial. If you want to see fully how this game plays, you can check that out, because there's even more to it that I'm talking about. There's an event deck where events happen every turn, and you can draw cards from that deck to later play them yourself to surprise your opponent with cool things that happen. This is a fantastic game in a small to medium-sized box where it feels a lot bigger than the box would indicate. I love this game. This is 1750 Britain versus France, and it is my favorite dueling card game. So let me know down below. Tell me in the comments, what are your favorite dueling card games? Let me know what you thought of my choices. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns on anything we covered in this video, go ahead, put it in the comments down below. And be sure to give this video a like. Share it on all forms of social media. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Kaptain. That's Kaptain spelled with a K on YouTube. And hit that little bell icon so you get alerts every time I upload a new video. And if you are in a position to and would like to help out the channel, you could support me by joining my Patreon, which is in the description down below. Or you could buy some merch if you want a cool gamer gear sort of shirt or mug or sticker. You can check out the link to our Teespring store, which is also in the description down below. And until next time, game on.